Hello and welcome to the first episode of Print It to Play It. Today we are going to be building ourselves Airborne in My Pocket. This is a card game that you can retrieve from Board Game Geek. It's a solo game where you play against the deck, where you are trying to make your way to an enemy bunker on D-Day and destroy the guns that are shelling the beaches. Through the power of editing, I have the components right here, and today you're going to get to watch me make these and talk a little bit about how I do it. So let's get started. Here I've downloaded the Airborne in My Pocket files. It came as 6 zip files. I unzipped them and they contained a whole bunch of JPEGs. There were a bunch of extras that I deleted. They were things like extra scenarios, special professions, like instead of being airborne, you could be a special operations guy or a sniper or things like that. A bunch of extra equipment. I deleted all of that. I just want the base game. So here I have the images for the base game, and I need to make those into a format that I can take to my local office supply store and say, please print this. Because you really can't give them a pile of JPEGs and say, print this out so that it makes cards and tiles. You need to format it for them. You need to give them simple PDF files, say print this thing. So I'm going to use LibreOffice for that. And it's fairly simple. We just, where'd my things go? Now I'll get so that I can see the page. You just take your image and drag it onto the page. Now I have two different types of images here. I have images for cards and I have images for tiles. So I need to make two files for that because the cards need to be printed on cardstock and they need to be double-sided. If we take a closer look, we have the fronts of the cards and the backs of the cards, so they need to be on opposite sides of the same page. The tiles, on the other hand, need to be printed on regular paper, and they need to be single-sided because I'm going to be gluing them onto cardboard. Cardstock tiles, they fold too much, they slide around, they're a pain in the neck to deal with. So I'm going to mount the tiles on cardboard. So I need to make two separate files since they go on different medium, and one needs to be double-sided, the other needs to be single-sided. So you take your image, drag it over into LibreOffice, and we'll do a couple of things. I'm going to size these to 8 inches wide. I believe that they come out 8 by 10. Okay, 8 and a little bit more than 10. And then we'll align them with the center horizontally and align it with the center vertically. And there we have a nice cards. Now it's possible these are supposed to be the same size as the page, but I don't mind the cards being a little bit smaller just to make sure that everything's going to print, because there's printable margins, or there's a limit to how close to the edge of the page you can get on a printer. And since I'm taking it someplace else, I really don't want to push it. I don't want to pay $10 to get stuff printed and find out that it cut off a 1/4 inch off of all my cards. Now these rule cards, since there's only 6, it doesn't take the whole page. I aligned them with the top just so they're kind of line up with everything else. They don't have backs, so it doesn't matter if they line up, but I'm tempted to make backs for them, but I'm not going to. That is all we have for our cards. So that's pretty nice. Make sure we've got everything in the right order. Front, back. Event fronts, event backs. What did it call it? Odds and ends. That's the fronts and the backs. Player aid cards, rules. Okay, so we've got those. We'll save that. So we'll save it, and then we will export it as a PDF. Now I want to make sure you have lossless compression. I go with the defaults for everything else. Not doing anything fancy here. Airborne In My Pocket cards.pdf. We'll save that. And there it is. We now have a nice file that we can take to our friendly local print shop and get printed without any problem at all. Just tell them we need it in color, double-sided, on the heaviest cardstock they have, and they'll print it out, and it will be beautiful. It will not line up perfectly, and there's nothing we can do about that. This is not set up to deal with that. If it was expecting the cards to have some bleed, have some extra, there would be larger spaces in between these, and they'd be filled in with color. And it wouldn't have black lines. So then you could, when you cut around these, if it was off by 1/8 of an inch, it'd just put the picture off center, but the edges would be okay. This is going to have white lines on the edges of cards and stuff. It's not going to be perfect, but oh well, that's how it goes. Print and play stuff rarely is perfect. So we'll start on the tiles. Close this. We'll make a new drawing. And this, we'll save this right away. Now setting this up is going to be very similar. We're just going to take our tiles, copy them in, resize them to the same size, because at least in this one everything was nice and uniformly sized. Sometimes you get things where the size of images are all over the place. But we'll just drag and drop all of our stuff here. We'll just drag and drop all of our images, resize them, and align them. The setup isn't any different. It's how you tell them to print it that's different. This, I'll come in and I'll say, I need this file printed in color, single-sided, on regular paper. I'm going to use glue. I'm going to use stick glue to affix this to cardboard for the tiles. I could be fancy and use letter size sticker paper, but I don't really feel the need for this. For something large like tiles, it's just as easy to use glue. And when you're doing things that are small, like if you're putting stickers on counters, then the actual sticker paper works better, just because you're not doing 100 counters, putting glue on and getting the thing lined up and then putting pressure on and rubbing it, which is a real pain in the neck. And you really need to, when you're gluing, you need to put pressure and you need to rub it down really flat and get a really good strong bond. So if you're doing something small like counters or dice, you want to use sticker paper for those. For tiles that you can do a page at a time, you just glue them on, rub it down. It's fine. You don't need to use the expensive sticker paper for that. And glue actually holds better, I've found. If you do it correctly, it holds better than the stickers do. We'll take a quick look at these. We've got our item tile backs, we've got our item tile fronts, outdoor locations, indoor locations, outdoor location backs, indoor location backs. And that does it for all of them. So we'll save this. And then we'll export it as a PDF. And there we go. I now have 2 PDF files that I can take to my friendly local office store and get printed out. So we will resume again when I've done that. I've taken the files that I created to my local office supply store and gotten them printed. And I have, first off, these cards. So we've got 4 pages of cards, double-sided. If I could hold them up to a light, you'd see that they seem to be generally printed about 1/8 of an inch higher on one side than on the other. Since this is the side that has the information we need for the game, we're going to use this side for our guide for cutting these out. So the backs will be a little bit off. That happens. Whoever makes games, they can alleviate this problem by leaving 1/8 of an inch around each card. Don't put a black line, leave an extra 1/8 of an inch. Usually the printers won't be off by more than 1/8 of an inch. So you're going to need a full 1/4 inch between cards with an extra 1/8 of an inch around each. And then don't have black lines on the back. That way when you print around the front, or when you cut around the front, if it's off a little bit, well, your printing will be a little bit off center, but it won't look weird. These are going to look weird. They're going to have big white bars. Now it's time to do some cutting. I'm going to be using my scissors. As I said in the previous video, I really do better with scissors than I do with the paper cutter, especially for something that I really want to be close. I prefer using scissors. So here goes. Almost done. Just the rules left. Luckily these don't have backs to get messed up like everything else. I have to say at least the printer is consistent. They're all off by pretty much the same. And there we go. That's all of our cards. So that does it for our cards. Next we need to make the tiles, which will be a little bit more effort. That's one mess cleaned up. Now it's time to make another one. We have tiles to make. The tiles aren't nearly as easy because the 2 sides of the tiles are on different sheets. Because we need to put them on either side of this. These are comic book backing boards. And I learned something new just today. When I asked for comic book boards, they asked me if I wanted regular or Silver Age. And I said, well, Silver Age? I haven't heard that before. Apparently, your normal comic book backing boards are 6 inches by 9 inches. The Silver Age boards, which are for comics from the 40s and 50s, are 7 inches by 10.5, which is darn close to what you need. Okay, that looks more like 7 inches by 10 inches. But it's darn close to the size of a regular letter-sized sheet of paper. So we'll be using that. I brought a napkin here to put down so that I don't accidentally get glue on my table, because we're going to be covering these completely. So how am I going to do this? First, I'm going to cut these along 2 edges. As accurately along the edge here as I can. In this case, straightness is fairly important. In fact, it might have been a good idea to use the paper cutter, but too late now. Need to get these right along the edge. At least with the tiles, they're not going to be off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue up this page, and I'm going to line it up right on the edges to get this corner. Once I've got that glued down, I'll trim the excess, glue up the other side, and line the backs up with the same corner. That will make sure that they're actually straight and lined up with each other. So first, lots of glue, lots and lots of glue. When you're using stick glue, I like these great big fat sticks of stick glue because you don't want to be stingy with it. And you also need to work fairly quickly. You don't want a super thick layer, but you want to have good solid coverage because bubbles create weak spots. Weak spots pull up, and once one spot pulls up, it brings the whole rest of the page with it. So you want to make sure you've got everything covered really, really well. I'm going to end up getting glue on the table, even with the napkins down. All right. Now, I get some play with this once I put it on, but not an enormous amount. So I want to try and get it as close as I can right at the start. All right, come on. All right, slide a bit. Come on. This is not the easiest thing. Come on. All right, has that got it? I think that's got it. All right, once it's on, you need to smooth it down with something hard. I like using the top of the cap because it's nice and smooth and it's handy. So you go over the whole thing. You want to make sure there's no points on your cap before you do this. Because if there's a little plastic bit sticking up, it'll scratch the tar out of everything, and then you'll be in trouble. So go over it several times, get it nice and flat and smooth. So like I said, bubbles will make it all come apart. And we'll just trim off this excess here, right along the edge of the cardboard. That's one side down. We need to make sure that when we put these together, we get it correct. So we want to do the same corner. So we'll cut these two sides. And the reason I'm being so picky about this edge is if these are off, all the tiles will be off by the same amount. So you want to put some care into it. All right. Now, Just glue up the other side. This nice and even coverage all the way to the edges. Now, even with a paper towel down, you want to try not to have too much going off the edges, just in case you run your good side onto the glue and have glue all over your printed images. That's not so cool. And it dries clear, you wouldn't be able to see it, but it's not so fun. Okay, now for the delicate bit again. No, don't stick where I don't want you to. No. You stick in this corner first. We'll get that all lined up. And then we'll work this side down. Make sure it stays nice and lined up. Are you nice? You're not nice and lined up at all. All right, now is that good? I think we're okay here. We're lined up with the top. Hope I didn't lose the picture there. It's all laying down without a wrinkle. Excellent. Now we'll just smooth this all down. It doesn't take long for this to dry. By the time I get done gluing the other sheets, we'll be ready to cut this. The others will have a little bit more leeway because they're not going to have so many tiles on one page. Trim this extra so it doesn't peel up. And there it is. One down. Set this off to the side. Now, these location tiles are a little different because they don't quite fit. There's just a tiny little bit that goes over the edge. So I can't just lay this on like this. I'm going to have to do it separately. Which means this gets cut into its own shape here. So we're going to need more than one piece of the backing board per page of tiles. Because we may, yes, we can put this like this, and we can get them all on one sheet. So that'll work out nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up where I want it. And I'll take a pen and just mark the corners so that I know about where the glue needs to be. I know I need to go past these lines, but not too far past. It is very, very easy to finish this up and then realize that you got the sides on upside down. Or even rotated 90 degrees. That's easy enough to do. That's all the tiles mounted. So I'm going to give these a little while to dry off. And while they're drying, I'll finish up the cards. While the tiles are drying, I'm going to round off the corners of these cards with my handy dandy corner punch. As you take a look at this, it's a fine looking card, nothing wrong with it. But if we round these corners off, it just looks a little bit better. So we're going to do that for the whole deck. Now I've done a lot of cards this way. And you want to make sure that the little piece that gets chopped off doesn't fall back into the punch like that one just did. Because it can throw off the other cards, it can make things not seat properly so the circle isn't even. Generally will cause problems. So that's why I'm holding it at an angle so it can pop out and won't fall back in from gravity. And then after each card, I shake out the extra stuff. There we go. One nice deck of relatively even, nicely rounded cards. And a whole bunch of confetti. The glue has dried sufficiently on these tiles that we can cut them out now. Let's start with the bigger ones. Now, hopefully these will be even, but I'm going to cut by the front sides just like I did the cards, just in case. Let's see, these ones have a little bit of an edge. Don't know if you can see. It's not focusing. There's a little bit of an edge right there. A little bit of white, so let's see if we can trim that off. So we've got all our locations. Now we'll just clip out these item tiles, and that'll do it for the build. Cutting stuff that's very stiff like this will relatively quickly ruin your scissors. I don't mean like in 1 or 2 games, but over the course of 6 months or so, your scissors will start to get loose. They'll start to rattle. Actually, this one's starting. And that's when you know it's getting to be towards time to get a new pair of scissors. I actually thought I had fixed these. I'd put a spacer in this screw. What happens is this screw is in, but there's parts inside that keep the blades at the right distance and keep them nice and secure. And there's kind of a washer in there. and they flatten out, they wear out. So I put some extra stuff in there. I actually rolled up a little piece of wire to act as extra spacer. And it worked great for a while, but it seems to be wearing out too. I don't know if I want to do it again or just buy a new pair of scissors. And that's why you really don't want to go out and buy a $60, $80 pair of scissors for this. If you're making clothes, cutting cloth, get yourself a good pair of scissors. If you're cutting paper and cardboard, don't. Just buy new ones. Oh, these were off a bit vertically too. Fiddle faddle. Well, we'll just trim those off. There we go. One nice stack of item tiles that I throw all over the place. Should be, I think, 9. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. 8 inside locations. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 outside locations. And there we go. I realized that I forgot one important thing. This game is going to require a few counters. And for that, I'm going to need images to put on the counters. We need a counter for where your person is. We need a counter for your current health. We need a counter for the current time. And we need a counter to show any special abilities, particularly to show if the red alert has been sounded. So hopefully we can get these from the game files. So we'll take a look. I'm going to go to the back of the cards here. We'll go to the main cards here. And I think this is not what I want because it won't let me cut things out. So we'll just drag this over to GIMP. I'm a big fan of GIMP, by the way. Now this whole, the Airborne In My Pocket logo looks like a great thing to use for the name. That'll do. Alright, next we need something to keep track of our hit points with. We'll close this one. And we'll make this one here. We need a circle that's 0.63 inches. And there we go. So let's see, the background for our heart counter. Let's make the background black. Next we need a clock. That's going to be on a white background, I think. Well, let's see what we have in the items here. We'll take it right off the sheet. And edit with GIMP. There we go. So this clock is what I'm after. Oh no, it does have a texture, doesn't it? Well, that's unfortunate. Alright, going to grab as much as I can around this. And that looks fairly round. In fact, I'll even go down, overlap this a little, because I'm going to set it up so that the clock itself is the entire 5/8 inch. So we'll just copy that. Come over to this. Ah, that one turned out smaller. So we'll have to make it a little bigger. Okay, that's the size I'm going to go with. That should be, judging by the others, that should be big enough that I'll have some bleed, small enough the whole clock will fit in the picture. Then we need one more thing. We need an indicator. So for that, I'm going to use an arrow, which is easy enough to make. And there we go. That should do for our 4 counters. Next, I'm going to print that onto sticker paper, and we'll put it on our counters. Be right back. Now we have our final portion of this, which is making counters. I have here some 5/8 inch counters. I had trouble finding 5/8 inch at the store, so I ended up buying a dowel rod and cutting these myself. So the widths are not very constant, but they'll do. They're all the same diameter anyway. So I have myself a new 5/8 inch punch. All I need to do is cut out these counters that I made. To do that, I'm going to need to trim off a little bit. So we'll get out our good friend Carl, because I want to be able to reuse this paper. So I want the edge to be nice and trimmed nice and straight. We'll just take off a little bit there. And we will carefully punch out these pieces. Now we'll give it another little trim to get rid of all this. And put the faces on our counters here. getting this stuff started. It's really designed to make larger stickers. It has slices in to make it easy to start, but if the slices don't happen to go through your little counters, then they don't help much. And there we have it, 4 counters. Here we have our completed copy of Airborne in My Pocket. Next time, we'll play it. Being a solo game, it'll be just me. Alright, I'm going to start this whole thing over. Here we have our completed copy of Airborne in My Pocket. For the next video, we'll play this game. It's a single player game, so it'll be just me. And we'll see if I can actually beat it. And go over the rules. And all that sort of thing. Gonna do one more take on that. So here is our completed copy of Airborne in My Pocket. Next time I will be playing it. I'll go over the rules and go through a game and show you how it works. Until then, have a good one.